The first time Ambassador Kethvar heard a human laugh, he mistook it for a threat display. Standing in the pristine halls of the Galactic Council Station, the towering Zephyrian diplomat had been delivering what his species considered the ultimate intimidation, a bone-rattling roar that had sent lesser species scrambling for cover across a dozen star systems. His chitinous plates flared, revealing the bioluminescent warning patterns that had evolved over millions of years to signal apex predator status. Ambassador Sarah Chen had simply tilted her head, smiled with those unsettling white dental structures, humans called teeth, and let out a sound that made Kethvar's translator struggle for a moment, before settling on aggressive vocalization, subsection, amusement. Then she had roared back. Not with the refined, instinctual call of an evolved apex predator, but with something far more terrifying, the deliberate, calculated roar of a species that had chosen to be apex predators. It was louder than his, lasted longer, and carried undertones that seemed to suggest she was enjoying herself. The memory still haunted Kethvar 3 months later, as he reviewed the intelligence reports flooding in from human space. Each document painted an increasingly disturbing picture of humanity's true nature. The Zephyrians had ruled the Outer Rim territories for millennia, their natural advantages undisputed. Standing 12 feet tall with retractable claws, armored, hide, and the ability to see across 17 different light spectrums, they were evolution's perfect killing machines. Their roar could paralyze most sentient species through sheer biological terror, a sound that spoke directly to prey instincts developed over eons. Humans, according to the initial surveys, were small, soft, nearly blind, and possessed of exactly 0 natural weapons, the perfect prey species. The Galactic Council had approved their membership as a diplomatic courtesy, assuming they would fill the traditional role of a client species under Zephyrian protection. That assumption had lasted exactly 47 days. The first incident, report landed on Kethvar's desk with a priority flag that made his translator hiccup. A human merchant vessel had encountered a void leviathan in the Kepler transit zone, a spaceborne predator the size of a small moon that fed on metal and energy. Standard protocol called for immediate retreat and a distress beacon to summon Zephyrian hunters. Instead, the human crew had apparently looked at this cosmic horror and decided it would make an excellent test subject for something they called Project Bigger Stick. The after-action report, filed by the human captain with what Kethvar was learning to recognize as characteristic understatement, simply noted, encountered hostile megafauna. Applied percussive maintenance via experimental kinetic ordnance. Situation resolved. Leviathan remains now serving as raw materials for station construction. Request permission to continue testing. The attached video files showed humans in mechanized suits literally wrestling with tentacles the size of starships while laughing. Actually laughing at the absurdity of it all. But that was just the beginning. Reports began flooding in from across human space. Pirates who had terrorized shipping lanes for decades found themselves outgunned by human merchant vessels that turned out to be military ships with a thin coat of commercial paint. Slave traders discovered that kidnapping humans was inadvisable when the entire human navy showed up to discuss the matter, with weapons that violated 3 different galactic conventions on excessive force. Most disturbing of all were the diplomatic reports. Humans had a peculiar habit of responding to threats by escalating beyond all reasonable proportion. When the hegemony of sharp teeth declared that humans were unworthy of respect, humanity had responded by challenging their entire species to single combat and winning. When the crystalline architects attempted to demonstrate their technological superiority by obliterating a small asteroid, humans had thanked them politely and then proceeded to blow up an entire moon, just to be neighborly. The pattern was always the same. When faced with a display of apex predator dominance, humans would smile, nod appreciatively, and then do something so disproportionately overwhelming that it redefined the entire concept of dominance. Kethvar's contemplation was interrupted by his aide, a nervous Trithan whose whiskers were twitching with anxiety. "Ambassador, the humans have requested another meeting. They say they have a friendly proposition regarding the territorial disputes in the Vega system." Kethvar felt his plates unconsciously flatten against his body. the Zephyrian equivalent of a human's hair standing on end. The last time humans had made a friendly proposition, it had involved them offering to relocate a problematic asteroid field by giving it a little nudge. The nudge had involved strapping enough antimatter to the asteroids to power a small civilization, then using the resulting explosion to spell out "Hello Neighbors" in letters visible from 3 star systems away. What exactly are they proposing? Kethvar asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. They want to settle the matter with what they call a good old-fashioned screaming contest. The aide's whiskers were now vibrating fast enough to be audibly humming. Winner takes the system. Kethvar stared at his aide for a long moment, processing this information. The Vega system contained 17 planets, 4 space stations, and enough resources to fund a small war. The humans wanted to settle its ownership by screaming. It was insane. It was illogical. It was so fundamentally human that Kethvar felt his combat instincts activate and immediately surrender in confusion. An hour later, Kethvar stood in the council chamber facing Ambassador Chen across a space that had seen the resolution of galactic conflicts for over 1,000 years. The assembled representatives of 47 species watched in fascination as the 2 apex predators prepared for the most ridiculous territorial dispute in galactic history. Kethvar drew himself to his full height, filled his chest cavity with air, and released the roar that had cowed civilizations. It echoed through the chamber with the primal authority of evolution's perfect killing machine, a sound that spoke of countless successful hunts and unquestioned dominance. Ambassador Chen listened politely, nodding as if he were giving a pleasant dinner toast rather than a threat that should have activated every prey instinct in her tiny human brain. When he finished, she smiled that terrifying human smile. "Nice," she said, and Kethvar's translator almost gave up entirely trying to process the casual dismissal. "Our turn." What happened next would be recorded in galactic history as the moment humanity officially established itself as the apex predator of apex predators. Ambassador Chen took a breath, opened her mouth, and screamed with the concentrated fury of a species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain through sheer bloody-minded refusal to acknowledge that anything was scarier than they were. It wasn't just louder than Kethvar's roar. It was louder than everything. The sound seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her throat, carrying with it the echoes of every human who had ever looked at something bigger and stronger and decided to fight it anyway. But she wasn't alone. Through the chamber's communication system, 47 billion humans across the galaxy joined in. The roar became a chorus, then a symphony, then something beyond description. It was the sound of a species that had survived ice ages, global wars, and the general hostility of the universe, by deciding that if the universe wanted to be hostile, they could be hostile right back. When it finally ended, the silence in the chamber was so complete that Kethvar could hear his own heartbeat. Ambassador Chen straightened her jacket and smiled again. "So," she said pleasantly, "about that system." Kethvar, still vibrating from the acoustic assault, managed a weak nod. It's yours." Later, as he filed his report recommending full cooperation with humanity in all future endeavors, Kethvar reflected on what he had learned about apex predators. The universe had produced many fearsome species, but only humans had looked at the concept of being an apex predator and decided it wasn't quite apex enough. When the apex predator roared, humans just smiled and roared louder, and somehow, that made perfect sense.